Always News Now Sports has your all-access pass to all things Hawkeyes. This is Eye on the Hawks, sponsored by University of Iowa Healthcare.
It's always fun coming to Hilton. I hadn't won here yet, so got to give credit to their fans. They were tremendous tonight, and they're loud. They support women's basketball. They make it fun out there as a competitor. So, yeah, good place for this to come.
Welcome to a new transitional era of Eye on the Hawks. As we move from football season into basketball season, we're going to have things look just a little bit different. Mitch Fick going to step away from the Eye on the Hawks crew for the majority of the shows moving forward as we go into basketball season, spring season. However, this show ends up looking, with it being the first year of running this podcast, we're still kind of in a testing phase of seeing how the show is going to look outside of football season. I think we got into a nice groove when it comes to football season with doing the shows twice a week, reaction shows on Sundays, midweek shows on Wednesdays, and basketball. We're going to kind of see how it looks moving forward, what we want to do. But we're going to have a new co-host with us on Eye on the Hawks, Curtis Fader, stepping into the desk and joining us. So, Curtis, thanks for coming in with us. And
oh, yeah, of course.
We have with us, as usual, Mike Howell and myself. Fortunately for the viewers, we have three members of the KGAN corporate broadcast games basketball team with us that we can talk basketball. And
we got one win at least, right?
I'm the shooter. He's the postman.
I'll grab you some rebounds and I'll block some shots. That's what I can bring you on the court. As usual, though, this doesn't change. You can follow the Eye on the Hawks social media accounts. Got us on X. Got us on YouTube. That's the little play button, right?
Yep,
I don't ever
that's
use
YouTube.
YouTube for actual viewership or anything, so I never know what the logo looks like.
And
And
that's Instagram.
and you can watch us on Instagram as well. Or you can follow us on Instagram for Eye on the Hawks as well at Iowa's News Now. Check out all the social medias and you can find us pretty easily. As usual, I always like to tell people that if you have any topics you want us to discuss, anything that you want to bring up, any questions you want to ask, go ahead and sound off in the chat if you're watching us live on YouTube, or shoot us an email. We couldn't be easier to find online. We are very much on the grid, so you can find us out there and send us anything you want to talk about. But today we're talking largely about Cyhawk basketball. First, before we get into some of our discussion topics for today, I want to hear some initial thoughts. I was there for the women's game on Wednesday night. Curtis, you were there last night for the men's game, even though Iowa State wasn't going to let anybody except the Des Moines station shoot on the baseline. They're trying to transition being an NFL team, apparently, so you were there at least watching on the sideline. Mike, I assume you were watching on TV.
Correct.
I want to get some initial thoughts. Curtis, from you, let's hear about some of your thoughts from what you saw to these Cyhawk games the last 2 days.
Well, for one, Hilton was rocking.
Yeah.
I mean, every bucket could have been a layup, could have been a SportsCenter top 10 nominee. It was the same reaction. It was an incredible atmosphere, and obviously that's what you expect from a Cyhawk rivalry. You expect them to show up, you expect them to show out, and that's exactly what they did. And you can tell that the players really fed off of that. But second of all, it felt like men versus boys out there. I mean, it just felt like if there was one gesture for the entire thing, it's the too small. That's what it felt like. And the players were hinting at it in their post-game pressers. Like, we knew the game plan. We knew that they were smaller than us. We knew that we could bully them. And that's exactly what they did. And it's hard because, you know, Philip Obracha seemed to be very underrated, and people are now seeing his impact for the team. Yeah. And obviously that's the position that you're hoping that Ben Krikke and Evan Bronze can fill. We haven't really seen a lot of Bronze lately. It seems to be Owen Freeman, and he's going to be really good later. I really want to see what he looks like with a couple off seasons under his belt. But as of right now, with the Big Ten the way it is, there's a lot of question marks and a lot of things they need to figure out.
But boy, the fans already really love Owen Freeman. They see what he can do off the bench, and he's been a fan favorite so far. Mike, any thoughts from the TV broadcast, what you saw the last couple nights?
Yeah, starting with the men because I was newer. You know, Owen Freeman is a bright spot. It's just one of those things that I think Fran McCaffrey teams, they struggle on defense. You could tell Iowa State could move and drive wherever they wanted to. And I guess I was a little bit surprised at how much they bullied inside. That was their game plan, and TJ talked about that. But if they don't shore up that inside defense, it's going to be a long year. I expect, since they have a young team, that they'll grow into January and February. So, I mean, hopefully we'll be able to see these young guys because, I mean, we have Brock Harding, Owen Freeman, Dembele. We got 4 freshmen getting major minutes. Price Sanford, the other one. but it's just going to be difficult if you can't stop anyone down low, and that's just what happened all night. And for the women, I mean, they went into their first tough road atmosphere, and they went down with like 4 minutes left.
The McLeod Center in Cedar Falls balks at that statement, but, but I take your point, yes.
That's a good point. That's actually what the broadcast was saying, so I had it in my head. But they kind of just, they were up. I didn't watch that game because I was traveling, but they kind of just, the UNI game, they kind of had control of it, right?
Yeah, pretty much start to finish. UNI did not play a good game, but the crowd was, I mean, I joke, but yes, the crowd was very much not what it was at Hilton, and they were, very much there to see Caitlin Clark play too.
Yeah, for sure. But I mean, when you go down like that and some of your players aren't hitting shots, I think Caitlin scored all the points in the third quarter like that. Usually that's a recipe for disaster for the soccer team. Obviously Caitlin's so good, but if she has to do everything, then they're not going to have a good game. When you get those role players and those other shooters going, that's kind of when this team excels.
Yeah. That was actually I'd kind of teased you guys with a potential wild stat, and that was going to be the one, actually, because watching the game when I was there, I don't know if any of us noticed that or noted that Caitlin scored every single one of their points in the third quarter. And on SportsCenter, they said that's the first time in her career she's done that, where she scored every single point for a team in one single quarter. That was, that's just incredible.
The only reason I knew is they mentioned it right after the quarter ended.
Really?
Yeah.
But anyway, so that was a wild situation. But for myself, I mean, the women's game, I think that I thought that would be a little bit more of a wide gap. I thought the women's game would look a little bit more like the men's game did. I thought that the experience of Iowa and Caitlin and Kate would separate themselves from who Iowa State was, since they're such a young team, because it is kind of two contrasting styles that are the same on both ends, where Iowa State is such a young group on the women's side, and Iowa had all the experience, but boy, they really gave them a test. And I was worried there for a while. Iowa got ahead by 7, I think, midway through the fourth quarter. Iowa State came back and made a push, got up by 1 point at one point. Got up by 1 point at one point. I think that's what I said. But Iowa, it looked a lot like Kansas State. That's how I kind of thought this was going to turn into. Like, shoot, this team is going to give up another lead in the fourth quarter, and they're going to lose this game. But Iowa weathered the storm. I think Caitlin even said after the game that she was like, it's not like we said anything to each other, or it's not like there was, some big rah-rah moment where we had to go in the huddle and, talk each other up or build each other up or anything. We just kind of said, all right, here's the game plan, here's the plays, and let's move forward. But Caitlin, speaking of that third quarter, that was the moment when she hit her 3,000th career point, third player in the Big Ten to do so, 15th player in NCAA women's basketball. I know I crunched the numbers after the game. I forget the exact number, but at the bare minimum, assuming she stays healthy, she's got 21 games left. I was like, is she going to push for 4,000 points? I mean, she's chasing Kelsey Plum's all-time NCAA scoring record for the women's court. And
she could come back next year. She mentioned it in the postgame. Like, she's like, I don't know. Even if I come back, I won't play in Hilton. But she's definitely not sold on one way or the other, it seems.
Yeah, but we'll talk about that in a second. Let's hear from Caitlin if she hit 3,000.
I had no idea, to be honest with you, and I knew obviously I had the opportunity to do that coming into tonight because of, it being on ESPN and talking to the reporters before, but I honestly didn't know I was going to eclipse 3,000 points until a few days ago. I was watching ESPN, I think it was the South Carolina game, and Debbie started talking about it, and I was like, oh, okay. But no, it's cool, and like you said earlier, it's special to be able to do it here. I have a lot of family in attendance and be able to see that, and but it was kind of the same when I broke the Iowa scoring record. We keep playing. We don't celebrate it in a timeout. We don't stop the game. Like, it's not what it's about. As long as we win, probably wouldn't be happy with scoring 3,000 points in a loss. That wouldn't be great. So, no, it didn't really cross my mind.
It's special. When you have a player, that is accomplishing great things, you just want to showcase her. And ESPN tonight gave us the chance to showcase her. I love our team that they all understand how good Caitlin is. And there's no jealousies. There's no, let down from anybody else. Our circle is tight. And I credit Caitlin for that because of the type of teammate she is. But I also credit the rest of our circle, that they understand that, when her light shines, it shines on all of us. It shines on Iowa, the University of Iowa, the state of Iowa. And we're going to enjoy it while we have it.
We've talked about some of the benchmarks that this means, what this means for the program. Everybody knew that she was going to reach 3,000. What's kind of interesting is she mentioned when she broke the Iowa all-time scoring record, that actually happened at the McLeod Center in Cedar Falls. So she's made both of these benchmarks so far in the state of Iowa, but none on her home court. So if she gets that scoring record, it'd be fun to have that come in Carver as well. Curtis, anything that jumps off the plate, I mean, in terms of reaching 3,000 points, what that means to a player, how big that is for somebody like Caitlin to do that?
I mean, deep down, it's got to feel good.
Yeah.
I mean, the one thing that Caitlin is underrated that I don't think people know about her is she's media trained. She knows how to navigate an answer, whether it was after the Final Four with all those ESPN interviews, trying to fester that Angel Reese rivalry. She navigated those waters perfectly. Or when Stephen A. came and was trying to pester her about if she's staying or she's leaving, and she's given this beautiful answer, then you realize she didn't actually answer the question. It was almost very perfect. But I think deep down, she's a competitor. She knows this is good. She wants the record. She wants to blast everybody. I'm not shocked if, for the sake of legacy, she might leave after 4 years just so that there's no asterisk of, oh, well, she was there for 5 years.
Yeah.
She's blasting these records. By the way, it's December. There's lots of season left. She's barely used up a lot of her senior year to break these records. That's how impressive this is.
Yeah, she's averaging around 30 points right now, I think. As of the other night, I believe it was 29 points a game, I think she's averaging this season. So if she keeps going above 30, she could get there. I mean, they would have to make it to the Big Ten championship game, probably make another Final Four run for her to have a chance at reaching 4,000. I mean, that could be a lofty goal, but for her breaking the NCAA scoring record, again, as long as she stays healthy, it's like almost automatic that she's going to get there by the end of the regular season even.
Yeah, she, correct me if I'm wrong, she was the quickest player too, right?
So at
get
the
to 3,000.
time, somebody had said second fastest player, but then we were seeing some people say that it was like Elena Deladon in the WNBA was the fastest to 3,000. So we weren't.
I want an ESPN article, and they say Elena Deladon got there in 113 games, and Caitlin did it in 110.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So I think she is the fewest games.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, you can tell by her answers, she doesn't really care. She's a competitor and she wants to win. I'm sure that is a little bit of media training. She actually will, when she goes, later in life, she's going to look back and she's actually going to be like, you know what, I'm one of the best ever to do it. But you can tell she's got one thing on her mind, and that's winning championships, which is good if you're a Hawkeye fan.
Yeah. One thing to at least say about Elena Deladon, obviously one of the all-time greats, both in college and the WNBA. But, I mean, if there is one asterisk to her, she played at Delaware. She was doing this against, I don't even know what conference Delaware plays in, somewhere out east, the NEC or something like that. But for Iowa to be doing this against Big Ten opponents, maybe one of the best women's basketball conferences in the country, speaks a lot to her, again, reaching this 3,000 barrier before she even jumps into Big Ten play of her senior season. I'd be curious to ask you guys right now, because this is a podcast and we just talk opinions, and that's about all that we can really do at this point. If you were to put a number or percentage on what you think Caitlin coming back next year, what the odds are that she returns, what would you say is in your mind right now for whether or not she comes back?
Painstaking loss in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah.
That I don't, because obviously as a competitor, I mean, you've already heard about Marvin Harrison Jr. Oh, I haven't beat Michigan. I might want to come back. He should probably go to the draft, but I think Caitlin knows that she's going to be number one, especially if, for example, it's before the Sweet 16 and she loses in Carver to a team. That could definitely influence things. But, yeah, I mean, it's kind of funny. We were talking about this. What incentive is there to leave? I think she's projected, she's obviously number one, but I'm not sure who's won the lottery. I'm pretty sure it's going to be Indiana.
It's on Sunday.
So,
is that right?
The lottery is, yeah. She mentioned it post-game. She'd watch it, but she has a game.
Yeah.
So would you rather spend next year in Iowa, where you are a god, or go to Indiana and hope that the WNBA's marketing team doesn't obscure you?
Yeah.
And obviously, in the age of NIL and everything, and all the money's not as big of an object, there's not a lot of incentive to go at this point. But I think everybody's anxiously awaiting to see how she impacts the WNBA. And I have no reason to think that she's not excited to go there. But if there's an extra year to be in her home state, playing in front of 15,000 plus consistently, I don't see why she would maybe not consider staying.
Yeah.
I think it's 50-50. I also think she wants to win a national title. And if I'm a cynical fan, and you know that, and I guess watching these first few games, I feel like this team's going to have a tougher time in the tournament than last year.
Oh, yeah.
Just with the struggles they've had. I know they're 8-1, but they lost that early game to Kansas State, avenged that in the tournament, that preseason tournament, and then, you know, this very young Iowa State team, which I think a lot of people thought Iowa would just walk over, and they kind of struggled with, and Iowa State has some good young players, but they're still pretty young. So I guess we'll have to wait and see. I wouldn't count her out, but if the role players, like I think Gabby went 0 for 5 from 3 last night,
Yeah.
or overall, I believe, if we're not getting like contributions from them, and Hannah's not healthy the entire season, I find it hard to believe that they'll actually make a run, but I wouldn't, you know, rule it out.
Yeah. I'm kind of in this spot personally where my percentage of thinking that she's going to come back has diminished slightly as the season's gone on. Before the season started, I kind of thought like, maybe 60-65% that she'll come back. I don't know. Something about it makes me think, kind of like Curtis alluded to in terms of the asterisk, if you will, for whether she's going to play 5 seasons and that impacting the record books. I think that maybe she would like the idea of having just a clean 4 years. Came to Iowa, what I plan to do, and now I'm going to move on to the next chapter of my life. And
I kind of think she doesn't care about the record books and how, like, oh, you got 5 years.
Yes.
I think she's like, so what?
Partially, yes.
I think she wants to win a title, and that's the only thing that she wants.
You're largely right, I think.
We
but
can't invade her head, though.
Yeah.
We don't know.
But also, I don't know. I think that if she's reflecting on her legacy in terms of NCAA, she kind of knows, like, you know, a clean 4 years is nice too. But you're right. I mean, it is going to be dictated, I think, a lot by what happens in the postseason. But I will also say that I think that a lot of her decision could be affected by the fact that she's not going to have Kate and Gabby back next year. I think that makes a big factor to her having these 2 teammates that she's been with all 4 years of college so far. Next year, she would have to be, as much as Kate is the glue this year, they say, and Gabby does a lot for leadership and defense on this team. Next year, that would have to be entirely Caitlin. I mean, she would be the senior leader on this team and would have to be the one to step up in not just scoring and being the offensive playmaker like she always is, but she'd have to be the one to also be the leader both on and off the court. And so that's something also I think that she'd have to consider next year.
My thing looking forward, and this is way too soon to even do this, is if Iowa could go out and get just a dominant, I know they failed this year, but we're going to have a couple scholarships open up after the end of the year. Go out and get a dominant big. Hannah plays the 4, like getting actual size, because that's what this team's really missed the past few years. And they could really be a contender, in my opinion.
Yeah. One thing that they did not get a dominant big, but I don't know if they really tried to or wanted to, frankly, because there were a lot of big names in the portal, but suffice it to say, I think that the coaching staff would say that a lot of them were not good fits for the University of Iowa. And so, you know, some of those names out there that people were saying like, oh, it'd be great to have X, Y, or Z on the roster. I don't think that the coaches wanted them on the roster because they wouldn't be good fits for the University of Iowa.
The biggest reason why, this is probably the only, like, negative thing, and it's almost a positive thing in and of itself. Lisa is just so nice, and it would gut her to take a scholarship away from somebody to bring in a more talented player. She has told us time and time again that each player 1 through 12 is super important to the team. And if you, obviously most fans who are, you know, detached would be like, oh, why not replace the 11th person on the bench with somebody who can get in the rotation? But I think she is really loyal to her players and is not going to willingly tell them to go transfer.
To your point, Jada Gyamfi is, you know, basically the 12th person on this team, but people always talk about how she's the most fun person on the team. People love having Jada Gyamfi around, so they'd hate having her leave. But as we talked about, you know, this Hawkeye team weathered the storm in the second half. The defense stepped up. They managed to find a way to score some points when they need to late in the fourth quarter. And they, didn't allow a 3-pointer in the second half?
That's correct, yeah. Iowa State was 0 for 7 on behind the arc.
Yeah. Here's them talking about the second half defense when they locked down in this game.
You know, we knew it was going to be a hard-fought game. They slowed the ball down and did a good job with that. But I thought our defense in the second half was really good. especially in that fourth quarter when they took the lead and out of bounds situations, getting deflections. At halftime, we talked about three-point defense. They didn't have a single three in the second half. Audie Crooks she's a great player, and she had 4 field goals at half and ended up with 4 field goals. So I thought Sharon Goodman did a really good job on her. It was our defensive intensity. I mean, we got forced a couple of turnovers at that point. We got 13 points off of our turnovers.
Yeah, the defense was huge, and there were a lot of people saying, like, boy, Caitlin was out there on her own this game. But to me, that is Kate Martin erasure. I thought that Kate was outstanding. I mean, even though there wasn't a lot of help from other factors, Kate Martin was huge in this game.
Yeah, but to be fair, they do have a little bit of a point because Kate Martin, she stepped up, she had 16, but this is the rest of the starting 5. Molly Davis, 2 points. Sharon Goodman, 2 points. Marshall, no points.
Yep.
And Kate Martin is the only person that was in double figures with 16. The next highest is
7
from Sydney.
To Sharon Goodman's credit, she was plus 14 on the box minus, and she really did play some. I think she had a couple blocks on Audie, who is amazing. We'll talk about her a little later, but Molly was plus 10 and Kate Martin was plus 11. So
Is that right?
yeah, so obviously if you're starting and you win, your plus minus is going to be good, but they really, I thought some of the role players outside of scoring did do their jobs.
Sydney Falter had 2 enormous.
Oh, she always does.
I mean,
She's so fun to watch.
she's the best. She too. I mean, she's kind of like the Owen Freeman of the women's team, where it's like she just comes in there and has some gritty plays where she takes the ball away. I mean, she had that one rebound that she just ripped out of Addie Brown's hands and put back in for a bucket. And yeah, she's just so much fun to watch. They're so tough. It was great to see Hannah Stolke back in the lineup. She hadn't played since Thanksgiving after having a leg injury, so knocked down a 3-pointer. Played just 13 minutes, so very low numbers for her. But that's the biggest thing, I think, when she comes back and if she gets fully healthy again, that's going to be a big difference for this team. But Kate Martin was a solid number 2. I think that she did exactly what this team needs her to do in these big games. Go out there, score 16 points, assist on a few Caitlin Clark buckets. And the team talked after the game about what Kate Martin meant in that win on Wednesday night.
I would never have thought that we would have won the game with only 2 people making threes. That really surprises me, to be quite honest. But, Kate always, I count on her to step up for us. I mean, we know Caitlin gets all the attention as far as defensive attention. And so, Kate people don't understand how good she is and how hard she is to guard. She's explosive off the dribble. She can post you up. She rebounds well. She can knock down the 3. In my mind, Kate doesn't get enough credit.
I'm a monster Kate Martin fan. I thought she was the difference in the game. Obviously, Caitlin's amazing, talented, one of the greatest women's players I've ever seen. But Kate Martin was the difference in the game, in my opinion, both offensively and defensively. And that's a kid that gets it. She understands it. She's well coached. She knows her role on that team. And I think you can see her growing even at this age. So very impressed with her.
I think Bill Finley is right, and this is, again, what we wanted to see out of Kate Martin because her season really started slow, and I think that was a lot due to the fact that she was really sick leading into the season. I mean, she didn't.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So on media day when we went and talked to the team, she wouldn't even be on camera just because she was so ill that she just didn't feel well. And then when we got a chance to shoot practice that day, she didn't even participate in practice. She was so sick. And she was still, I think, feeling the effects on the day at the crossover at Kinnick. There was questions of whether she'd even play that day. So I think that illness lingered into the regular season a little bit because her numbers were not there for the first few games. But the last, I think, 4 or 5 games, she's really picked up and outstanding. So I think that she's just finally back to full strength, and this is what we can anticipate seeing out of Kate this year. And we should correct Coach Bluter, as you pointed out, Mike, that there were actually 3 players who made a 3-pointer between Caitlin, Kate, and Hannah Stolke had a 3 as well.
That's big for Hannah because if she can stretch the floor and make a couple of those shots, not even a lot, just a couple here and there so the defense can't just collapse, that's going to be huge just for the spacing moving forward.
Yep. The team did get what they needed to out of some of these role players. Sharon Goodman had a couple of those big blocks on Addie, as you pointed out. Molly Davis, you like to see a little bit more out of her. But still, I mean, she does what she needs to do when she's out there. But yeah, the one question mark has been Gabby. I mean, it's a similar storyline to what we saw this team last year, where Gabby just was a really slow shooter out of the gate. And I know that fans love Gabby for her defense too. She's a great defender, and that's the big thing that she's going to serve out there. And so if it's a game kind of like they had in the Final Four, I don't know if Gabby took a single shot in the Final Four game against South Carolina. She was just basically put out there to be a defender. And if it's a game like that, then okay, I guess that's what you get. But when she is putting up 5 3-pointers in a game, or when she's going 1 for 7 on 3-pointers, that is a detriment to the Iowa roster. And it's man, I really wish that Gabby would have gotten off to a better start this year.
The biggest concern is who can create their own shot. For example, we saw this in the LSU game when Caitlin Clark and Sinano were in foul trouble, and they were both on the bench, and it was kind of close at that point. It was single digits, but then obviously with everybody on fouls and the way that game was refereed very tight, couldn't really get any stops when you needed to. But when you're trying to get a shot, nobody was getting open. Nobody was drawing separation. And you really wonder if maybe Caitlin Clark's under the weather during a Final Four push.
Sure.
If she is not Herculean, obviously we're seeing Kate Martin stepping up with points, but Caitlin Clark's creating a lot of looks for her. She creates a lot of looks for the team by getting penetration, drawing people in, dishing it out. She's actually very unselfish for such a good scorer. Who can create shots for the team?
Yeah. As much as this team is, I mean, this is a Hawkeye podcast, and so we're going to be talking mostly Hawks, but we should address this Iowa State team and what they are going to be, because as we've said, they kept this thing a lot closer, made it a lot more interesting than I think a lot of people anticipated, based on the fact that they only had one player on the roster that was on the same team last year. That's Naimere Dew. She came off the bench for Iowa State last year. She was the only one who's on this team that's just filled with freshmen, with transfer additions. And
They had one out, right? Emily Ryan.
Emily Ryan, yeah, who hasn't played this entire season.
She hurt. I guess I missed that.
They've been very vague about it. In the preseason, they said that she had that it's a medical issue, I think is all they said, but have never specified what it is. So she was there. She was sitting on the bench for the team, but she hasn't suited up for a single game this regular season.
They lost their backcourt.
Yeah.
Ashley Jones and Lexi Donarski.
They got gutted by the portal and by the draft, of course, with Ashley Jones and Stephanie Suarez leaving for the draft, of course, too. But, boy, this team is going to be really, really good for the next few years. They're so young, and all their great players are freshmen. Audie Crooks, I know you and I, Curtis, I think had a chance to see her playing for Bishop Garrigan last year. I mean, we knew that she's a special kind of player at the high school level. There were some questions about how that was going to translate to the college level. Did you think that she was going to be this good when she got to Iowa State?
I mean, I don't know. And it's weird because, I don't want to preemptively anoint her because obviously the Big 12 schedule is still out there. There's a lot of and for example, we were just mentioning how Iowa's post defense is that a little suspect. I wonder what that's going to be like against a rough, tough, we're going to beat you in the post type of team in Big 12 or potentially in March Madness if they get there. And I mean, this team, they're always in it to win the Big 12. So I'm very curious if they can turn it on late and maybe they can win it again.
Yeah, I was really impressed with her and Addie Brown. It seems like they were going punch for punch with this number 4 ranked Iowa team. I didn't expect that. I didn't watch them though yet, so I didn't know what to expect. I think they've taken some knocks early, but if they come out and play like that, I think they could make the tournament.
Let's hear a little bit about Audie Crooks. I've got a few numbers to throw at you guys once we get back, but let's hear what they had to say about Audie after the game.
Oh, I think they're tremendous. I mean, again, I think Audie Crooks is absolutely fabulous. They've got great young talent. So yeah, I mean, they're gonna do a great job, and they're gonna keep getting better and better as the year goes on.
I think coming into this, there were not a whole lot of people that thought that we could genuinely win this game. I think a lot of people thought we were just going to roll over and die and let them do what they wanted to do, but I thought we showed a lot of tenacity, we showed a lot of fight, and we competed. And with 4 minutes left, we were up. So I think we learned that when we collectively click and when we play together and we're cohesive, we are a phenomenal basketball team.
I think we proved ourselves right tonight and proved that we can hang with anybody. And when we play like that with each other and fight hard, for 35 minutes and compete as a team, we can compete with anybody. And now we just have to build off that and continue to play like that against everybody, not just Iowa.
Addie Brown, who we heard from as well. Iowa folks might not know Addie as well because she's an out-of-state pickup, but I believe she played in the McDonald's All-American game. So she's one of the most elite high school players coming into the college game this year. Audie Crooks this year didn't start at first. She started, I think, the last 4 games. Right now she's averaging 15 points a game, 5 rebounds a game. You've got Addie Brown, another freshman, 14 points a game, 7 rebounds a game. Their third starter, who's a freshman, is Kelsey Jones, of course, the name that Cyclone fans know. There have been 2 other Joneses who have played for Iowa State.
Anna Jones is a coach.
Yep, and Kelsey Jones is right now. She only scored 2 points the other night, so she wasn't much of a factor against Iowa. But she's right now averaging 7 points and 5 rebounds a game. I mean, shoot, these might be your 3 best players, Naime or Du aside, and they're all true freshmen. I mean, this is going to be a team that I think could even be a dark horse contender in the Big 12 this year. Outside of Iowa State, I don't know a lot about the Big 12 and some of the great teams are going to be. I know Oklahoma's usually good, K-State. So I don't know. They could be a dark horse contender this year to finish in the maybe top 3 or 4 in the league. They'd maybe be a favorite going into the next few years. If they have everybody back, if they don't get gutted by the transfer portal again, this is going to be a really tough team in the next few years.
Yeah, Texas, Baylor, and K-State are the 3 teams ranked right now in the Big 12, all in the top 13. Texas at 5, so not a lot of ranked teams, but always a decent conference, and they just got the additions of Houston, BYU, and Cincy, so I don't know. Those are good men's teams, but I don't know how they are in the women's.
Yeah.
Cincinnati, I believe they should have Jillian Hayes. No, it's for volleyball. Jillian Hayes, by the way, sister of Jackson Hayes, who was in the NBA. He went to Moeller, but Jillian went to my high school in Loveland High School in Cincinnati, Ohio. I think she's playing volleyball, actually, but she was a very talented basketball player. I wouldn't be shocked if she was on Cincinnati as well.
Yeah, bringing the Cincinnati knowledge, Curtis Fader. That's why we bring you on the show.
Oh, yeah, that's what all the Hawkeye fans
Yeah,
are.
I mean, they're a team that if they can play that well against number 4 Iowa, this is a team that if they just get a couple of upsets, maybe beat Baylor or something, hang with Texas. This is a team that could be an NCAA tournament squad this year. So can't put anything past Iowa State. Gosh, I've been impressed with them as they've played in this early season.
Tough start, but they're really starting to find their groove.
Yep. They've still got a few more warm-up games. They're going to play UNI, a couple more non-conference, and then they start Big 12 play, I think, on the 30th of this month. But transitioning to the men's game, a tale of 2 kind of nights if you're a Hawkeye fan, because as much as you love that Cy-Hawk win on Wednesday, Thursday was a very unwatchable game. The men have had 2 very unwatchable games in a row now. Struggles across the board. I don't know. We want to jump right into one of these sound bites and hear from the team.
This one's from Fran McCaffrey, just talking about first the struggles and then one semi-bright spot in the first half. So this is Fran McCaffrey.
It was kind of like the other night. We didn't get enough movement, whether it be ball movement, people movement. You got to give your opponent credit defensively. They were working hard. And we missed some guys, but we have to do more screening, more cutting, more penetration. And we just kind of moved it side to side, and somebody shot at the end of the clock. We need more activity to challenge the defense in a better way. Peyton certainly hit some threes. Make 4 threes, that's pretty good. And he made some early to kind of keep us in the game early. And he's in a tough spot. He had 14 and 6. We're playing him kind of a little bit out of position. He's 6'7", so he can play the 4 spot. But we were going to move him around, and we'll continue to do that.
Now, far be it from me to use Cyclone Larry as an expert of college basketball, but Cyclone Larry said after the game, he was like, that's the softest Division I basketball team I've seen, referring to Iowa. And they certainly looked that part, though, for a lot of that game. I mean, they just could not hang with these guys.
I hate agreeing with Cyclone Larry, but I texted all my friends in our Hawkeye group chat just in the second half, this is soft.
Yeah.
And I mean, coming from me, like, I'm soft as well, but I'm not a Division I basketball player. It's just, man, the defensive intensity, and it's been a theme in the Fran McCaffrey era, and usually they beat that by scoring more points, but they were missing shots, and they don't really have one of those elite scorers like they have in the past 4 years, it seems, with Chris Murray, Keegan Murray, Garza. So just to me, it seems like it's going to be a tough year. A rebuilding year, get the young players minutes. Hopefully they grow. Speaking of like Brock, I'm glad he got a lot of minutes last night in a good environment. These kind of games will be beneficial down the long run, but it just kind of sucks watching them as they play out.
Curtis, from being in the building, I mean, any of your takeaways? I know you probably know the ins and outs of basketball better than I do. Just like watching the game in person, what were some of your biggest takeaways?
I mean, you heard Fran talk about the cutting and trying to have better movement. They were basically kind of frantically circling around the three-point arc, and Iowa State's guards were tracking them, and they really couldn't get separation. And you're trying to there's an identity issue, I feel like, because who's the main guy? Who is the scorers? Who are the great defenders? What lineups click? How do we play small? How do we play big? Because, you know, you're switching all these things out. Brock Harding, he's really good, talented ball handler. He's got that fast twitch. He's a little smaller, so you're trying to wonder, people will probably want him to be more consistent of a shooter. And that is something that Ty Perkins can fill. But you're wondering who can provide the defense. And also, like, it seems that Fran doesn't know where to play Peyton Sandfort. Sanford has also gotten into foul trouble a lot, and Price has had to come in. Obviously, he's already said he doesn't mind playing the freshman, but if the score is tied 60-60 with 3 minutes left, who's his 5?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know either. And I think a lot of fans are trying to figure that out too.
I kind of wish they just put Cricky and Freeman, start both of them. Freeman has looked like, and you know, he's had some mistakes. He's a freshman.
Yep.
He looks like the one with the most promise. And I think you just need to let him grow. And, you know, there's still, to me, I don't feel like either of those, Cricky and Freeman, are elite defenders, but Freeman's better.
Yeah.
So I think they both need to play because Cricky can score too at the 4. Playing an undersized position, especially when you have some bullies down low, it just doesn't seem like it seems like they'll get set up for failure, but, you know, if you hit some outside shots, maybe that's different.
Yeah. The maybe one bright spot for the Hawkeyes is that just about everybody in this roster can return next year. Ben Cricky is going to be done after this year. He's used up all of his eligibility, and so they're going to have to try to go out and find some other big in the portal, I assume, while also developing Owen Freeman as they go along. Evan Bronze has a couple years left, so we'll see if he turns into something. But that is the good news, is that at least you have most of these guys coming back next year.
I might raise a question to you guys. I mean, we've seen a small sample size, but I just brought up the question 60-60. Who's your 5? Who would you put in to try to win a game?
I mean, I guess at this point it's got to be Cricky, like with no other options. I mean, Cricky has looked really good in some games this year. Didn't have it the other night, but
Great, he looked amazing.
Yeah, but Cricky's had some really nice games, and he's a guy who seems to be catching a lot of attention right now. So I guess that's who I'd go with.
Yeah, I think he's been better overall. I just think defensively, and Freeman probably gives you more. It sucks because when Cricky can't hit those mid-range shots, or isn't hitting the mid-range shots like he was against Creighton, right? And that's why he played so well and he scored so many points. But those are tough shots. Those are like low percentage shots. So you don't want to rely totally on that. But when he's not hitting those shots, we're missing a lot from our 5.
We also haven't mentioned Patrick McCaffrey at all. And he's supposed to be, I think everybody was expecting him to take the step up and be the next big scorer that everyone can kind of fall behind. Him and Sanford were supposed to be kind of the co-leaders of the team, and we've seen flashes of it from Peyton Sandfort.
Yeah.
But from Patrick, it's weird because it's, you know, there's a lot of these young guys that could be good, and you're wondering if his minutes are going to start dwindling a bit.
16 minutes last night, 0 points for Patrick. I frankly had honestly forgotten that he was I forget he's on the roster at points, frankly, just because he has been such a non-entity for so many games this year. He also can come back. He's got 2 years eligibility, 1 year of eligibility after this one. But he's another guy that can come back. But I think, that's been a disappointment to see him not step in a bigger role this season. Same with Peyton to a certain point. I think that I really thought that Peyton would be that next guy to put up, average 20 points a game or something. His scoring hasn't quite been there. He's been very good, very serviceable, and I think, what he should be on a normal college roster, he has been that, but they just need a lot more out of him this year based on not having a lot of guys returning to this team.
Yeah, I think they defensively can focus on him more because there isn't a Chris Murray to take some pressure off. And that's probably why he's not scoring as much. It's just because people know he's deadly behind the 3-point line. So he's just not – there's not a lot of separation when, they do try and get the ball to him. So that would lead me to believe that either Dix, Bowen, or Perkins, we need to have them – penetrating more inside, and I think they tried to do that. It's just the turnovers got killed in the first half with turnovers. The two big takeaways, points off turnovers, Iowa State had 25 and Iowa had 9, and then points in the paint, 46 for Iowa State, 18. And that was all about when Iowa did try and get to the rim, they were defended really well, and this Iowa State team is pretty good defensively. And it was tough to try and get anything down low.
Yeah, and they spoke about that after the game, that was a struggle the other night, and we'll see if that's a struggle moving forward as well.
Well, more than anything, our identity has been and will continue to be about attacking the paint first and going inside. And again, when pick and roll, they play the ball screen, 2 guys come to the basketball. We felt like there were some opportunities to get Rob and Trey going right away. Our guards did a great job making the reads. Those guys did an exceptional job finishing and going right at the rim, and that set the tone for the whole game. I think when you go in there and have success right away, it sets you up for future success. Now it opens the drive up more.
I think we took advantage a lot. I think that one thing that we really emphasized and talked about in our film sessions and stuff was that they didn't really have a lot of rim protectors, and that as long as we stayed patient and really got to our spots, we could do really whatever we wanted to. And I think that we did a great job of listening and focusing and letting the film translate over to the game.
First and foremost, defense wins games, defense wins championships. So having the pride that getting the stop, playing great defense is absolutely a prime example of what we did tonight and what we're going to continue to do.
Here's a couple final thoughts on the Cyhawk and men's basketball especially. Mike, I think you've said that maybe Iowa basketball is your favorite sport to follow or one of your favorite teams to follow.
Yeah, for I guess it changes every year. Like when Aaron Rodgers was taken to the Super Bowl, it'd be different, but I'm a Packer fan. The earliest memory I remember being a Hawkeye fan is me and my dad watching Hawkeye basketball. So I've always enjoyed it and taken it way too serious, and they haven't really had a lot of success in March, which just kills me since I remember getting out early and watching the 99. I think 99 was the last trip to the Sweet 16. Yep. I remember watching that game. So earliest moments, I remember, 2001 Big Ten title game over, I believe, Ohio State, and then 2006 against Indiana. Those are the moments that I remember.
I am curious to hear, well, I shouldn't say in your memory overall because there were some tough times under the Big Lick. But in the Fran McCaffrey era, do you remember 2 back-to-back games where Iowa looked this bad? I mean, they've looked really, really bad against Purdue and Iowa State.
Yes, but only because the first 2 or 3 years we had a losing season, and I was in college and I went to every game. So I can't. I mean, I'd have to look back, but there was a lot of times where we'd go and Iowa would just be outmatched.
Really?
Yeah. And then that first year, I believe one of the first games of the year they lost to UTSA at home. So but outside of that, when they finally got turned around and went to the tournament a few times, I don't remember, but it seems like every year at Mackey, they get beat pretty bad.
Yeah, that's true.
He's only won there once.
Yeah, Mackey's a tough place.
And usually these early season Big Ten games, once they started those, it seems to me like Iowa always gets stuck with Purdue and then some other team that's good.
Yeah. Speaking of tough road tests, while I have this in my mind, a little trivia for you guys. Do you know the one Big Ten arena that Lisa Bluter has never won in?
If I had to guess, I'd probably say.
Would it be Indiana's?
No.
Ooh, Michigan?
No.
Well.
Gatekeeper, release the information.
Maryland, my Maryland.
Oh, yeah.
Ooh.
The last Iowa win at Maryland was in 1993 or something like that. They went over there for what would have been a non-conference game back then. and they have
That makes sense.
They have not won at Maryland since they joined the Big Ten in 2013. I was just kind of looking to see all the different arenas that Caitlin Clark has won a game in. And I was going through. I was like, nope, not at Maryland, not at Maryland, not at Maryland. Of course, Angel Reese would have been there for at least one or two of those matchups, I think, when she would have played at Maryland. But yeah, since they joined the Big Ten, Lisa Blue's never won over there, and they will have a chance to do that, though, in either January or February. I know they go over there. But speaking of another coach, Fran McCaffrey, I think he entered the season, 12 wins or 13 wins away from breaking the Iowa all-time coaching wins record, something to that effect. Whew. If they look the way they did the last couple of games, can they win 6 more games this year? I don't.
I think they'll win 6 more, but
Yeah.
I mean, that's a good question. I'm just pulling up the schedule right now.
They have a couple of pretty weak non-conference games coming up. They have Florida A&M in Des Moines. I don't know much about UMBC this year or Northern Illinois.
The Retrievers.
Yeah, but once they get into Big Ten play, again, if this is the Iowa team that we can expect, there are not going to be a lot of W's on that schedule.
But I think we are kind of overreacting a tad.
Yeah.
I'm not sure they're going to make the NCAA tournament because, I mean, they were on the bubble for a while last year, and that was with Chris Murray, so that's realistic. I don't know if their season's going to tailspin. I mean, you're looking at teams they beat last year. I mean, they beat Boo Booey last year. Northwestern looks pretty good this year. I'm not sure. But, I mean, Rutgers, I think, is doable.
They play Michigan on Sunday, and they're favored. Michigan's 4-5.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Okay.
So, I think these 2 losses have been to 2 good teams, and I wouldn't be surprised if Iowa State is a middle seed in the NCAA tournament once they get going. I know they have like 3 losses right now, but I could see it going either way, though. Like, if they had a really down year and were close to 500, I wouldn't be surprised because I don't see that one score, that jumps out at you like they have in the past 3 years.
I would not have overreacted like this after the Purdue game because, they don't have anybody to match up with Edie, and not that anybody really does. And so
That's a red flag in itself, but that's another story.
So that game, I was like, well, that's a loss. But I thought, at least they might keep it close with Iowa State, who's going to be a good team, and that game never felt like it was close by any stretch of the imagination.
That's true. To be fair, last year's Iowa State game wasn't close the opposite way, and I think Iowa State was fine.
And the year prior.
And they missed Chris Murray that game.
That's true.
Also, the year prior,
Yeah,
2021, Iowa State won by 20.
that's true.
So,
That's true.
and then in 2 years' time, they might win by 30.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if that's the trend.
A lot changes once Big Ten play starts, which it does on Sunday for both the men's and women's team. We've got a bowl game pick'em going on for Eye on the Hawks. Mike, I think you put this together. Want to plug this baby?
Yeah, so we mentioned it on Sunday when we did our football podcast, and I tweeted it out, the information. I'll tweet it out again today, but just on the Hawks pick 'em, we have about 7 people that signed up right now.
Nice. Okay.
So, yeah, I don't remember when the first bowl game is coming up, probably the next few weeks, so probably like 16th or 17th, so.
I was going to say, even I have not signed up for this yet, so I love
I'm
those.
still riding the high of winning my NCAA bracket tournament in 4th grade. So I got a free La Rosa's gift card, and it's a good pizza place, by the way.
Nothing on the line, just bragging rights. We'll probably shout out the winner unless it's like ESPN fan 00, blah, 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 like the first
Looking
entry.
forward to receiving that. Thank you.
But yeah, sign up. I'll tweet out, once or twice a week before the bowl games hit.
Sounds good. All right. Well, keep joining us for Eye on the Hawks and keep an eye out on our social medias for when our next live show is going to be. Again, we're still kind of feeling things out, how they're going to progress in the basketball season. But you can follow us on all of our social medias account, of course, Twitter, X, YouTube, and Instagram. You can check us out, and we'll keep you posted for what the future looks like for this show. But I know we're going to be still having some regularity with this, and when Iowa football gets a little bit closer to the bowl game, I'm sure Mitch Fick will step back in, and we'll have some discussions about what things are going to look like against Tennessee at the Citrus Bowl come January 1st. But I'll just say goodbye from our crew, and thanks for joining us, and we'll see you at an indefinite date in the future here on Eye on the Hawks.